Hello, good morning, and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. This is Shyam Kaggod here, taking up the Hindu news analysis dated 21st May 2025. These are the 10 articles that I've picked up from the daily edition of Hindu newspaper for a comprehensive discussion to address all your concerns and answer all the questions which you need to understand for the civil services examination. If you like this initiative, do hit the like button. And if you yet to join our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. Before I start the discussion, please do let me know that I'm audible and visible for all of you. Please do let me know. Am I audible and visible for all of you? Done. Let's start then. So before I start, a very important announcement. Once the session is over, if you want to download the PPT that I'm using today, it will be made available on my Telegram channel. This is a QR code. Scan it, join, and download. And second important point, those who are preparing for the next year civil services examination, that is for 2026 or 2027, you need to have a comprehensive coverage of static portion, have coverage of current affairs, need a very good reading material. You need to attempt the preliminary test series and the mains test series to clear and ace the examination. All of this is available when you purchase our courses at a discounted price of 60%. And if you use the code IS English, you can also get a free extension of up to 12 months. Those who are interested, do check out the details by clicking on the link provided in the description. Let me start the discussion from the editorial page. The first article, Scheme Based Workers, the Struggle for an Identity. Let me explain the important points here. Point number one, in the recent times, there has been a lot of discussion and debate regarding the protection to the workers in the Indian market. That is, the protection that should be provided to the labor in the Indian market. In certain instances, there has been a discussion associated with the need to protect the workers in the private sector. I will give you examples. Recently, in one of the companies in Tamil Nadu, there was a discussion regarding allowing these particular labor to form a labor union or a trade union. There was also discussion in the context of one more company which employed a lot of gig workers to provide social protection, social security benefits, right amount of wages to these workers. So there have been instances where there has been a discussion associated with providing protection to the labor who are working in the private sector. But at the same point of time, we also need to focus on providing protection to the people who are working for the government as well. For the government as well. And no, I'm not talking about the full time workers or full fledged workers of the central government. I'm not talking about them. Their interests are generally taken care of by the government appointing the commissions or right the pay commissions or providing for social security benefits, etc. I am talking about certain types of workers who will work for the government as scheme based workers. As scheme based workers. Now, let me tell you what is the meaning of a scheme based worker here. Let me take examples of the central government initiatives. There are initiatives such as midday meals scheme, correct? There are initiatives such as midday meals. There are initiatives such as National Health Mission. There is a scheme of Government of India by the name of Integrated Child Development Scheme. Now, whenever the government announces these initiatives, the government needs to have certain number of workers, certain number of people who will help the government in implementation of the schemes at the grassroots level. You need to have certain people at the grassroots level for the implementation. For example, you must have heard of Anganwadi workers. Anganwadi workers. You must have heard of ASHA workers. ASHA. Anganwadi workers essentially are working for the government in effective implementation, in ensuring the implementation of National Health Mission. The ASHA workers are working for the government, right? Basically to implement or effectively implement these initiatives of the government. So in many of these initiatives, you see the government of India announcing a scheme, but at the grassroots level, there are certain workers who are working for the government, who are working on behalf of the government, effectively implementing these initiatives. But listen to me very carefully. The government of India doesn't classify these as full time employees of the government. I'll repeat the statement. The government of India doesn't define these workers as a full time workers of the government. For example, let's say once you clear the civil services examination, you will become a IAS officer. Are you a part time worker or a full time worker under the government of India? You are a full time worker, full time employee of government of India. And once you become a full time employee like this, the government not only will provide lot of benefits to you, will also provide social security, social security contributions or social security benefits also for you. For example, once you become an IS officer, you will get a very good amount of a salary. Monthly, the salary is given to you is fixed. There is a protection of your job. There is also social security benefits which are provided once you become a full-time worker. Social security benefits in the sense paid leaves are provided, right? Or for that matter, insurance coverage is provided by for many of these workers. Or for that matter, right? Let's say the maternity benefits are provided for these full-time workers. But on the other hand, please understand the government of India for these particular workers, such as Anganwadi workers as well as ASHA workers, the government of India doesn't cover them or doesn't basically define them under the definition or basically cover them under the definition of workers. Then what are these referred to as? The government generally uses the terminology such as volunteers. The government uses the terminology such as volunteers. Where does it use it? When the scheme is announced, in the scheme, the implementation guidelines are mentioned. In the implementation guidelines, the government essentially will define these as volunteers. Or else, the government also uses one more term, honorary workers. Honorary workers, which means again the same thing. That is, these are not full time employees of the government. These are basically working on behalf of the government. And technically speaking, when these people are working, the government, when they make the payment, the government doesn't use the term salary there. The government doesn't use the term wages there. The government generally uses the term honorarium. Honorarium. Right? Again, which is nothing but a payment only, but not a salary, not a wage. Now, what is the impact of all of this? Let me explain this. What is the impact? And by the way, these kind of workers, that is the Anganwadi workers as well as the ASHA workers, these basically are covered under the concept of scheme based worker. This is point number two. Now, what is the impact of all of this? The impact is very simple. When you are not covered under the definition of the worker, you are not an employee of the government, will you be provided protection under different labor laws in India? Just think of this. Will you be provided any kind of a benefit or any kind of a protection under labor laws in India? What kind of protection am I talking about? For example, there is Industrial Disputes Act. There is Industrial Disputes Act. There is a Minimum Wages Act. Whenever a worker is covered under these kind of laws or under these kind of regulations, there are certain protections which are provided to the workers. For example, you are allowed to form a trade union. The government has to pay, or even the private sector has to pay, certain amount of minimum wages, which is again defined by the government. But because you are not defined as a worker by the government, you are not an employee for the government of India, You will not be provided any kind of a protection under these kind of labor laws. And that is the precise reason you will see multiple times in the newspaper and in your vicinity, in your own state, etc. These kind of workers under the central government schemes or the different schemes will basically go for a strike, will go for protest against the government policies, demanding higher amount of payment, higher amount of wages, etc. I'll give you a couple of examples. During the pandemic 2020, during the pandemic, certain number of Anganwadi workers, certain number of workers, social welfare workers like this went on a strike, and the Delhi police filed FIR over for on 100 more workers like this. The Delhi police filed an FIR, and not to forget the most recent one in the state of Kerala. Right, many of these workers went on a strike, indefinite strike. Right, after 13 days, it was recalled. But essentially, what is the issue here? The issue is very simple. These are not defined, these are not covered under the definition of workers or the employees of the government. Hence, very little protection. The amount of payment that is done is not sufficient. It's not even sufficient to take care of the activities that they're doing on behalf of the government. But whereas, on the other side, whereas the amount of work pressure on these people, right, the number of working hours on these people, the amount of distance that they travel on day-to-day basis is compared to a full-time worker. So this is essentially the problem that the article focuses upon. And in the current affairs, because there has been, let's say, a strike that was conducted by the scheme-based worker in Kerala, this also becomes very, very important. So what has to be done? What is the solution for all of this? Listen to me carefully. The writer simply says, right now, the scheme based workers are basically adopting a three-pronged approach. They are following a three-step approach. The first one, they are basically conducting protest or strike against policies of the government like this. They are demanding a better wage, a better salary payment for them. Second one, there is a concept called as Indian Labor Conference, ILC. Remember this. There is a conference called as Indian Labor Conference. What is this Indian Labor Conference? The Indian Labor Conference is essentially a tripartite arrangement. It's a tripartite committee. The tripartite here simply means that there are three parties which will come together to form a committee. And the three parties are: one, the central government representative is there, the employees, right, the unions or the representation from the employees is there, and the employers representation is also there. So these three parties generally come together, hold negotiations, give recommendation to the government, and this as a committee functions under Ministry of Labor and Employment. The argument is there is a need to provide these kind of recommendation under the concept of ILC, which has already been done, which has been already done by the right representatives. But the issue is the government very often is worried about the cost associated with these kind of reforms. The government is worried about the cost associated. For example, imagine tomorrow if government of India announces all the Anganwadi workers and Asha workers are treated or will be treated as full-time employees of government of India. If this is the announcement done by the government of India, can you imagine the likely implications in terms of increased expenditure? The government has to provide certain fixed amount of wages now. The government has to provide for social security benefits. The kind of impact it will have on the finances of the government of India. So very often it is stated that government of India doesn't implement them because it is worried about the financial implication. And second, the government generally gives an argument saying that these will take time, a lot of discussion is required, deliberation is required, we need to make changes to the laws, etc., etc. Citing these, the government simply keeps on postponing these kind of reforms. So these are some of the issues that have been raised in the article by the writer. So, to conclude the discussion, I'll just say one thing: the government needs to implement certain reforms which will provide protection to these kind of workers. No doubt, right? You need to implement certain reforms. Reason being, the government announces these reforms, but the implementation, the effectiveness of the policies is because of the work done by these scheme based workers. So, should we provide protection to them? No doubt we should provide protection. If government can implement multiple reforms to provide protection to full-time workers, for example, the pay commission has been announced. In such cases, no doubt government of India's expenditure will increase because of the announcement. So if we can take care of the full-time workers, why can't we even also take care of the scheme-based workers who will play a very important role in the implementation of these schemes? And not to forget, many of the times, the work that is done by these scheme based workers have been recognized not only by the government of India but by World Health Organization as well. They have been recognized, they have been praised. But at the end of the day, what the workers require is not just praises but the wages. So that is essentially the discussion associated with the first article here. I've given an MCQ associated with this. Consider the following statements regarding the Indian Labour Conference. It is a tripartite consultative committee. It must be held once every 5 years. It is also known as a Parliament Committee. Right? How many of these right are correct? How many of these statements are true? Do let me know. Let me make a correction here. It is also known as Labour Parliament. Let me make a correction here. It is also known as a Labour Parliament. Right? How many of the statements are true? Do let me know in the right comment section. Next question, next article, environmental clearances. What is the importance here? Listen to me very carefully. Couple of days ago, there was a judgment issued by Supreme Court. And there was a judgment issued. There was an order issued. What was the order about? There were two regulations which were announced by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. The one announced in 2017 and another one was announced in 2021. The Supreme Court of India struck down both of these regulations. What is the importance here? Listen to me carefully. Back in the year 1984, there was a disaster which took place. Right? You must have heard of this. You should have heard of this. That is Bhopal gas tragedy. After the Bhopal gas tragedy, the government of India realized that there are certain projects which will have a larger impact on not only the environment, on the land, on the water, on the people residing in the vicinity. And realizing that these kind of projects should be evaluated first. These projects, before the implementation, there must be evaluation of the impact of the project. The government of India announced Environmental Protection Act, EPA, EPA 1986. And after the implementation of EPA 1986, one more provision under the EPA was introduced. And that particular provision is associated with environmental impact assessment. Is the story so far clear with all of you? Environmental impact assessment. What do you mean by environmental impact assessment? The government of India has identified around 39 types of projects. Listen to me carefully. The government of India, under this, has identified around 39 types of projects. And what the government simply says under this is, if you are a company which is going to implement a project and it falls under the 39 categories that we have identified, you need to conduct a process called as environmental impact assessment. Now, what is done under the environmental impact assessment? Once the project will be implemented, once the project will be implemented, what is the impact of the project on land? What is the impact of this project on water? What is the impact of this project on people residing in the vicinity, etc.? The overall evaluation, assessment, in simple terms, the overall impact of this is assessed. And after the assessment is done, the committee, expert assessment committee, they will use the term expert assessment committee. The expert assessment committee will submit a report. It will provide inputs to the Ministry of Environment and Forest, MOEF, right? MOEF and CC. The name, full name now is MOEF, that is Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Now, based on the recommendation, the MOEF and CC will either reject the proposal or approve the proposal. Right? Either they will reject it or they will approve the project. And this is essentially the process of environmental impact assessment. And for better purpose of clarity, what the government of India has done is these kind of projects have been classified into two different classifications. One is project classification A or project classification B. In case your project falls under the classification A, you need to get the approval from the central government. You will have to get the approval from the central government. And if a project is classified under the classification B, you need to get the approval from the state government. This is essentially the important points associated with the concept of environmental impact assessment. Now, what is the connection of all of this with the regulations of 2017 and 2021? Let me connect it. Very often you will see that multiple projects are implemented by, let's say, private sector without taking all the approvals that they need to. Simple. Imagine there is one project which is classified under these 39 types of projects. They have started construction of the project. They have started implementation of the projects, but they have not taken the approval, let's say, from the Ministry of Environment and Forest. Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Let's say they have not taken all the approvals. What the government of India did was in 2017, they came out with a proposal. What was the proposal? If you have already implemented the project and if you have not taken all the clearances, all the or the approvals which are needed under the environmental impact assessment, then I'll give you 6 months. Listen to me carefully. I will give you 6 months. Now go to the government or come to the government, take all the approvals that you should have taken before the implementation. Everybody is able to understand? They will use a technical term, ex post facto. Ex post facto. Right? Done. Ex post facto. That is, you have already implemented the project, but you've forgotten. Right? Let's say you've forgotten to take the approvals from the government under the EIA. Now come to the government, take all the clearances. These are called as ex post facto approvals. And after this, the government of India set up a committee. There was a committee that was set up by government of India. The committee studied what kind of projects have been covered under this, etc., etc., and it gave a recommendation to the government based on which, again in 2021, right? Again in 2021, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change issued certain guidelines. Issued certain guidelines. And before you people ask me, sir, which committee? Yes, or what a committee? Yes, or what a committee? So here are two sets of guidelines, 2017, 2021. What is the essential difference between the one that was announced in 2017 and the other that was announced in 2021? In 2021, another set of guidelines which were announced, that is a memorandum, office memorandum, which was issued by the Minister of Environment and Forest. It stated that if you have not taken the approvals even now, although I announced in 2017 for you to take within 6 months, even now if you have not taken the correct approvals, come to me again. Come to me. I will give you approvals, but I will impose a certain penalties now. Is it okay? I will impose certain charges. I will impose certain penalties, but I will give you approvals, which essentially means those companies which have already implemented the project, not followed the guidelines, not taken any approvals, they might have polluted the environment to a very greater extent. Now, their projects will be legalized. I hope you understand. Their projects would be legalized now. So, that is essentially the importance of the announcement that was done by the government in 2017 and 2021. This matter went to Supreme Court. Supreme Court of India simply said, in the environmental laws in India, in none of the environmental laws in India, there is any provision of ex post facto approvals being provided. Is my statement clear to all of you? There are no provisions in any of the environmental laws in India where ex post facto approvals will be provided, which means without taking the approval, you cannot implement the project. And if you have not taken the approval and if you have implemented the project, then later on, Government of India cannot provide to you ex post facto approvals. That is essentially the importance of the order or the judgment that has been issued by the government of sorry that has been issued by the Supreme Court of India. But what is the impact of this judgment? Listen to me carefully. The Supreme Court of India in this case has stated that anyways, right, the government of India has already given the approvals regarding these particular projects in the past. In 2017 as well as 2021, it has already legalized, given the approvals to the project. So in that case, we can't do anything. But going forward, the government shall not issue any kind of orders which will legalize or provide ex post facto approvals for environmental related, right? Let's say the assessment issues. That is the point number one. Point number two, some of you might be thinking, sir, why did the government of India do this? Is it not wrong on the part of government of India to provide these kind of approvals after the implementation of the project? The government simply stated that one, no doubt these people or the companies which have implemented the project without taking approval, they have violated the law. No doubt regarding that. But because they have violated the law, should I go ahead and simply close the project now? Should I simply shut down the project? If I do that, don't you think that will lead to unemployment? Don't you think that will lead to certain disruption in the supply chain, etc.? Again, I hope you understand. Some of you may disagree with this, but this is the viewpoint. First one. Second one, the government of India also stated that yes, they have implemented the project. They did not take the approval. Now, what I will do is, according to the guidelines of 2021, I will analyze, I'll calculate how much penalty should be imposed on them. I will impose the penalty, collect the money from them. So whatever benefit they have derived by not taking approvals, they are losing that particular benefit by paying the penalty to the government of India. Right? So these were some of the arguments that have been given by government of India to provide environmental clearances. Right? So this is essentially the discussion associated with the editorial that has been given. Associated with this, one more MCQ. Consider the following statements. The Environmental Protection Act has made the environmental impact assessment for certain projects, right, mandatory. It has right basically made EIA mandatory for certain, right, projects. The MOEF and CC approves the projects based on the recommendation of expert appraisal committee. Third statement, the projects covered under the EIA, the clearances must be given by the central government. How many of the statements are true? Do let me know. Let me go forward. Next article, making the progress of India future proof. What is the meaning of it? Listen to me carefully. Whenever there is, right, let's say certain climate related disaster. For example, let's say there is earthquake. There is, right, let's say prolonged flood, or there is a prolonged drought like situation or drought which is experienced in a particular region. The impact of these events, the impact of these kinds of disasters has multiple dimensions. That okay, it has multiple dimensions. What is that dimension I'm talking about? It will disrupt economic activity, correct? It will basically disrupt, right? Let's say the livelihood of lots of people. It will basically lead to, right, destruction of lot of assets and destruction of a lot of infrastructure which is created. It is also going to lead to, right, let's say loss of lives. It is going to lead to loss of lives. So there are multiple dimensions to understand whenever you talk about the climate related disasters. And in the context of India, please understand, the writer simply says, in India's situation, we do not have a comprehensive framework. I repeat, we do not have a comprehensive framework for, right, let's say the adaptation related to the climate physical. What do you mean by climate physical risk? It is potentially how much damage can be caused by a permanent change in the climate in terms of economic losses, financial losses, and the impact on the society as well. So, when you club all the three economic, the financial, as well as the social impact, the potential impact of a climate change that will have on all the three is called as a climate physical risk. For example, I told you some time ago, if there is a prolonged flood like situation, prolonged drought situation, right, all these will have a larger impact on the society as well as the economic and financial, right, losses are also incurred. So, in the context of India, the writer simply says India's future. If you want to protect India's future, you need to have a comprehensive adaptation framework. The technical term is National Adaptation Plan, NAP. You should have a national comprehensive, by the way, comprehensive national action or adaptation plan. Now, before I go forward, there are two technical terms used in the article which you will also come across in your ecology and environment chapters. One is adaptation and the second one is mitigation. Listen to me carefully. One is adaptation and the second one is mitigation. A lot of times when you read about Paris Climate Agreement, right? When you read about, let's say, different agreements which have been signed by India for protection of environment, etc., you will come across two terms, adaptation and mitigation. What is essentially the difference between that and where the focus is there right now, not only in India but also around the world? The basic terminology of adaptation and mitigation, what do they mean, is simple here. Adaptation simply means, let's say there is a climate change. How do you adapt to the climate change? When there's a climate change, there will be certain impact of that. And how do you address this particular impact? How do you adapt yourself? I'll give you one example. Because of the climate change, let's say certain region, there is right lesser amount of water that is available, underground water or rainfall, etc. Because the monsoon pattern has shifted. Let's imagine. So, don't you think because of the climate change, now cultivation in this particular region becomes difficult? Now, what is the adaptation measure here? Will develop climate resistant, climate resistant varieties of crops. Is it okay? Climate resistant crop varieties. For example, I'll take the current affairs here. Very recently, two types of rice varieties have been developed in India, genetically engineered in India. So, one of the features associated with these rice varieties, these are drought resistant rice varieties, which is also an indication that we are developing certain technology, we are adopting certain measures to basically, right, address the issue of climate change. It has already happened, we want to adopt to that. And what about mitigation? Mitigation measures generally refer to those kind of measures which will try to prevent the future changes in the climate change. Future changes, we want to minimize it, we want to reduce it. For example, let's say investment in renewable energy projects. Think of it. Investments in the renewable energy projects. When the government will invest or private sector will invest in renewable energy projects, that is wind energy, solar energy, etc., don't you think the dependence on the fossil fuels will go down? If the dependence will go down, burning of the fossil fuels will also go down. If the burning will go down, emissions will go down, changes to the climate will also be lesser. Right? So I hope you understand there are two arguments here, adaptation measures as well as mitigation measures. And the only reason why I'm explaining both of these, because right now, if you see not only in India but also around the world, focus is more on mitigation measures. The point clear? The focus is more on mitigation measures. Take the example of Government of India. Don't you see multiple reforms or the measures or the policies or the schemes of Government of India are targeting the mitigation, right, associated with climate change? And the funding is also, the writer simply says, the funding is also more for mitigation measures. But at the same point of time, the argument is when we are implementing mitigation, we should also focus on adaptation. We should also focus on the adaptation measures. In the context of India, the writer simply says there is a lacune. There is a certain problem associated with the adaptation measures being implemented. How so? For example, for having adaptation measures, for implementation of adaptation measures, you need a comprehensive plan, correct? You need a comprehensive plan or a comprehensive policy. But to have a comprehensive policy, you need to have collected lot of data. You need to have lot of data based on which you can make a comprehensive policy for the implementation of adaptation measure. The problem in case of India is we do not have a comprehensive database which is available at a single point. We have databases. We have different types of data which is available, but it is not available at a single point itself. For example, have a look at this. We have flood maps. There are flood maps available for, right, let's say certain parts of India. But is it available at only one point, or let's say, is it integrated with other types of data sets in India? No. Flood maps are available with one organization. There is also vulnerability. Also a vulnerability atlas which has been prepared. This vulnerability atlas is with IMD. You also have, right, let's say the disaster framework, the disaster framework for India. But this particular disaster framework is available with NIDM. The point that the writer makes is very simple. All these are data sets. If you want to have a comprehensive policy, there should be integration. There should be integration of all of these data sets so that you have information regarding, right, flooding, you have information regarding vulnerability, you have information regarding the disaster framework, etc., using which the policies which are effective, which are efficient, can be made as well as implemented. But the writer simply says all of these data sets are available, but in a fragmented way. These are available in a fragmented way. And that's the reason the government of India needs to make a policy which is comprehensive, and that is a National Adaptation Policy. NAP, National Adaptation Plan. And the government of India needs to make this. Reason being, India is a signatory of Paris Climate Agreement. Right? It's a signatory. And according to the provision under the Paris Climate Agreement, the member countries are supposed to make a comprehensive plan for adaptation measures as well. One plan has been made by the government of India earlier, but the government now is revamping this particular plan by including multiple sets of data which are available even at the lowest level, that is at the district. So the new comprehensive national adaptation plan is underway. It is supposed to be announced by the government. But having said so, it is not just the government of India that is implementing this kind of a adaptation plan. Even at the level of financial institutions also, these kind of policies are being implemented. And there is a need to implement such policy. I'll tell you the reason. The adaptation measures are not just relevant, let's say, for protection of the people. It is also relevant to protect economic activities. It is also relevant to protect assets which have been created. For example, let's say you're a private sector company, you want to invest and develop certain infrastructure. Don't you want to know what kind of climate change is happening in this particular region? If there is indeed a climate change that is being observed, don't you want to address these particular right issues which might crop up in the future because of the changes in the climate change right now itself? Don't you want to take right, let's say, precautionary measures, ensure that there is a constant supply chain that will be maintained even though in the future there is a change in the climate in the area where you have implemented the project? So that's the reason even the private sector, there is a requirement of getting this access to information so that the plans can be implemented or projects can be financed and implemented. Now, for example, what is being done by other agencies in India? I'll take one example: Reserve Bank of India, RBI. RBI very recently has sent a directive to all the banks in India. What is the directive talking about? The directive simply asks, or let's say orders the banks to assess how much of their assets are exposed to climate change. I'll repeat the statement. The Reserve Bank of India is asking these particular banks to evaluate how much of their assets are basically facing the exposure to the change of climate. That is a climate risk associated projects. They will have to make an assessment. Reason being, if the private sector has taken a loan, let's say from a bank, and that particular project was affected because of the climate change, repayment shall be disrupted. If the repayment is disrupted, the bank's NPS, that is the non performing assets in the banking sector, might start going upwards. And the bank is facing a risk of losses because of the climate change. Right? It is not just associated with manufacturing facility, let's say wind energy projects, solar energy projects. And so, don't you think banks will provide a lot of funding for these projects? If there is a climate change, sudden change in the pattern like this, the revenues generated by the projects will be affected, repayments would be affected. So, there are certain measures which are being implemented by other regulators also, including Reserve Bank of India. And so, these are certain points which have been provided in the article to ensure the argument of the article in one line is simple. You need to protect the future of India. You want to become a developed country in the future. You want to have growth as well as a development in the future. One factor that can disrupt these objectives or the target is change in the climate. Have a comprehensive policy, not only involving mitigation, but also adaptation measure. Okay, so these are certain points. I've given a question for you to practice mains answer writing. To overcome the climate physical risk, there is a need of a comprehensive, effective national adaptation plan. Elaborate in 250 words, 15 marker question. Let me go to the next article. Very important article. WHO, World Health Organization, adopts pandemic treaty or pandemic agreement. I'm pretty sure all of you know what kind of a havoc, what kind of a disruption was caused because of COVID 19. Be it 2020, 21, 22. What kind of a disruption was caused in the day to day activities of all of us? Economic activities, the trade, right? The livelihood activities, etc. Now, after the pandemic, the member countries of World Health Organization have come together. For last 3 years, there has been a discussion, deliberations have been conducted, and finally, the World Health Organization has adopted a pandemic agreement or the pandemic treaty. Important one for UPSC examination. What is the importance of this particular treaty? Whenever pandemic happens, the impact of the pandemic is not just limited to one country. It is not associated with one country. It will keep on spreading to other regions, other countries as well. The best example is what happened during the pandemic 19. It originated in one country but spread across all the other countries, across other countries, disrupted the global trade, disrupted the global activities itself. So now what the countries have done is they have come together, they have agreed. I hope you understand this. This is just an agreement. It is not going to be implemented. This is just an agreement. Why? It will be implemented after certain number of countries will take the agreement to their respective countries, discuss, deliberate, and then formulate a policy agreeing, right? Basically ratifying this agreement. And that is the reason the World Health Organization simply says this treaty or this agreement will come into force, will come into effect after at least 60 countries ratify the agreement. After at least 60 countries ratify this particular agreement. But what are the essentially important points in this treaty? What are the important points? Point number one, fair distribution of vaccines, diagnostics, and therapeutics during pandemic. One of the very important observations during the pandemic, COVID-19, was that the access to drugs, the access to healthcare, access to medicines, etc., there was no equity in that. There was no equality in that. Some of the countries were having huge amount of access, readily available access to the members in that country or the citizens of that country. And some of the poorer countries had to fight, had to basically ask, request other countries to provide access, to give them medicines, to give them, right, let's say, the drugs, to give them therapeutics, etc. What WHO now says is, in the event, let's say, there is one more pandemic, in such cases, the member countries will have to keep on providing this kind of assistance, especially to the middle income countries or lower income countries. That is, poorer countries require assistance that has to be provided by other member countries of WHO. Second, very important, pathogen access and benefit sharing, PABS. Pathogen access and benefit sharing. What is essentially the argument here? Under the pathogen access and benefit sharing, now the WHO says whenever there is a pathogen, let's say there is another variant of COVID, which is actually, right, raising concerns now. I hope you understand. I'll come to that next article. There is a new variant, COVID 19, JN1, JN1, which is raising alarm, which is raising concern now. So, whenever there is a variant like this, whenever there's a pathogen which is causing pandemic, certain countries will conduct studies on it. They will do the research on this, and they'll be easily finding out, or they will be able to, through the studies, they'll be able to find, right, let's say, the genetic material of the, let's say, virus. Once this genetic material is available, you can easily develop a vaccine against it, or, right, let's say, a treatment regimen against, right, this kind of a virus. But this, right, let's say, the invention, sorry, this research and development that has been done by one country should be made available to other countries as well. Should be made available to other countries. Otherwise, what might happen? One country will do R&D. They will only develop, let's say, vaccination. They will supply the vaccination to its, right, let's say, the citizens. If anybody else wants, they will charge a very high rates or exorbitant rates. That will essentially divide the population, or let's say, create divisions in the global market. Poorer countries will not be able to get access to the vaccination. So that is one of the very important provisions under this. In addition to this, the pharmaceutical companies now will have to allocate 20% of the pandemic related health products for WHO's distribution. That is 20% of your production, you will have to allocate it to WHO. They will take it and they will try to distribute this, especially in low income countries or poor income or poor countries. This has been again done in order to ensure there is access to medication. WHO shall not dictate national policies. For example, can WHO, as per the treaty, ask the government of India, direct government of India, to impose a lockdown? Not allowed. Right? Any kind of policies in fighting against the pandemic, it shall be the power, it shall be under the powers of the respective government. WHO will not have any kind of a dictation powers under this. Next one, member countries or states will have to commit to basically enhance a disease surveillance system and sharing of data, right? Let's say data which they have collected promptly with other countries as well. At this, you can understand in the context of COVID-19, where China basically did not provide access to any kind of a data associated with COVID-19 outbreak. So these are some of the very important points associated with the pandemic treaty or pandemic agreement. Please make a note of this. You can expect a question on this kind of a article. Next one, since there is a discussion associated with the pandemic treaty, there is one more point of a concern, one more news of a concern. Again, I'm saying concern because the number of cases under the COVID is again rising up. It may not be very high in case of India, but in other countries such as Hong Kong, I don't know how many of you have been reading about this. In Hong Kong, the number of cases right under COVID, it has suddenly jumped up. Last week it was below 10,000. This week it is above 14,000 cases. Above 14,000 cases. And for India also, it is a matter of concern as of now. Although government of India said it is very much under control as of now, the government of India simply says right now up to 19th May, around 257 cases of COVID have been detected in India. 257 cases of COVID again, mainly in three states. One is Maharashtra, second one is Kerala, and the third one is Tamil Nadu. These are the three states where majority of these cases have been detected. Right now, the government simply says nothing to worry. It is very much under control. But as usual, you will have to take preventive measures. The WHO now says, not specifically WHO, but many other agencies such as John Hopkins Medical Center says there is a new variant. There is a new variant, that is Omicron virus variant. Right, the Omicron virus variant, that is JN1. Remember, this particular name can be asked straightforward in the preliminary examination. So JN1 variant, which belongs to the Omicron, it has basically started causing the symptoms, or let's say people are getting contracted right from this particular virus, which is again nothing but a COVID case itself. So the number of cases in countries such as Singapore, in Hong Kong, they are increasing. It is right raising a scare as of now. But please understand, the governments have simply said nothing to be worried. It is under control as of now. What are the symptoms once you contract JN1? And please understand this point as well. Until now, the government of India said, although 250 plus cases of COVID cases in India, none of them are JN1 variant. None of them are JN1 variant. It is a common COVID. Right. So symptoms JN1 can be compared with other variants of coronavirus, including cough, loss of taste or smell, headache, runny or clogged nose, exhaustion, sore throat, fever, and others. These are the symptoms. And what is the impact of it? Yesterday, the market took a nosedive, or basically, market crashed at certain points because of multiple concerns. One of the concern was right, essentially the SN1 variant. And so these are certain points associated with the World Health Organization, COVID-19, as well as right, let's say the treaty, right, or pandemic treaty. Now let me go forward. Before I go forward, let me ask you a very simple question. According to you people, which is the largest rice producer in the world? Let me see. According to you, which country is the largest rice producer in the world? If I ask you largest rice producer for last year and largest rice producer for this year, right, answer should be different. Reason is, listen to me carefully. India has become the largest rice producer now. I'll repeat the statement. India has become the largest rice producer now. Sir, why are you emphasizing on the term now? Reason being, until recently, it was China. Until recently, it was China which was the largest rice producer. Now, according to the latest data, there was an article which has been published in Business Line regarding this also. India is the largest rice producer in the world. Okay, remember this particular factual data point. Now, what is the other factual data point? India is right on the path to become largest potato producer as well. It is on the path to become largest potato producer as well. And what is the importance of this? Listen to me carefully. After rice and wheat, one of the large consumed agriculture commodity in case of India is potato. Right after wheat and right, let's say wheat and rice, another agriculture commodity which is majorly consumed in India is potato. Potato has connections not only in terms of production, it also is connected to the exports from India. One of the major agriculture commodities that we export is a potato. For example, we export it to Sri Lanka, we export it to Bangladesh, we export it to other countries, UAE, etc. So it is also one of the major agriculture commodity exported from India. It is connected to farmers' income. It is connected to, right, let's say the food security in India. It is also connected to food processing activities in India. So there is a lot of connection with the idea of a potato with economic activities. Please be aware. Now, what can UPSC do? If UPSC wants to ask a question to you, they will ask related to cultivation of potato. I hope you understand. They will ask you questions related to cultivation of potato. For example, potato, what is the time period that is taken for the cultivation of potato? Is it similar to rice? Is it similar to wheat? Or it is a short cycle? Can we use a multiple cropping, a multi-cropping using potato? What are the states where potato is produced, etc.? These are the kind of probable questions which UPSC can frame because of this article coming in. When you study geography, please make a note of all of them. Please make a note of all of them. Okay. Next article. Couple of more articles, short articles now. One more point of update associated with India-Bangladesh relation. With the interim government being formed in Bangladesh, interim government, that is a temporary government, elections have yet to be held, the relations between India and Bangladesh have only deteriorated. Rather than improving, they have become, right, let's say more and more worse as the time passes by. And the caretaker government, head of the caretaker government there also has not helped the cause. Multiple statements given by the head of the caretaker government has only made the matters worse rather than improving the situation between India and Bangladesh. For example, now the caretaker government, for the first time after 1971, the Bangladesh is purchasing, right, certain agriculture commodities from Pakistan. They have started purchasing agriculture commodities from Pakistan for the first time, mind you, after 1971. And the kind of statements being given, the kind of, let's say, the policies which are being implemented, the approach that the new government in Bangladesh is taking, let's say, vis-a-vis China and India, there are concerns which have been raised by the government of India. Now, what the article simply says is, government of India should play it very, right, intelligently rather than imposing trade restrictions. I repeat, the article simply says, rather than imposing trade restrictions, what government of India should do is engage with other political parties in Bangladesh. Engage with other political parties. And as of now, the announcement regarding the elections in Bangladesh is not yet done. That is when the elections will be conducted, exactly on which date. Nothing has been announced. The caretaker, right, head of the Bangladesh government simply said, we will conduct it this year. But when? On what date? Right? How many cycles or how many rounds of, right, let's say, in how many rounds the elections will be conducted? None of these details have been announced so far. So what should government of India do? Basically start engaging with other political parties in Bangladesh. Stop hurting the sentiments of the business community in Bangladesh. Because by imposing these restriction, what kind of restriction? Some of the commodities which were coming into India through land ports now have been disallowed. Some of the commodities which were exported from Bangladesh into northeastern part of India, the states in northeastern part have been banned now, which will hurt the business community. Rather than, right, basically pushing away the business community, the government of India should call for elections in Bangladesh. Should build a narrative along with other countries, should build a narrative to conduct democratic elections in Bangladesh. and hold consultations, right? Have talks with other political parties in Bangladesh. That will essentially build a narrative that will essentially make the right, let's say, other participants, other stakeholders in Bangladesh, right, let's say, move away from this argument that India is one of the reasons of, right, let's say, the problems in Bangladesh. Because the earlier government, right, before it was thrown out, the earlier government, there were very close relations or close linkages between Indian government as well as the Bangladeshi government. After that, after the government was overthrown, must have seen there is a narrative in Bangladesh that is basically India's policies are hurting Bangladesh. This narrative needs to be changed. How can you do that? The article simply says engage with other political parties, call for peaceful elections so that a legitimate government, which is elected by the people, will form the government. That will essentially change the narrative, and the situation which is deteriorating between India and Bangladesh can be addressed by such a policy rather than simply hurting the business community in Bangladesh. And so these are certain points. Next, just factual information in next couple of articles. Shurai Lily Festival, after a gap of 2 years, has been inaugurated. What are the important points? Just focus on the important points here. Don't focus on the other issues. That is right. There's a discussion that a bus which was having a name of Manipur, like written like this, the security forces stopped, etc., etc. Don't worry about all of this. Focus on what is relevant, what is important for your exams. Point number one: Manipur as a state has gone through a lot of destabilizing activities or destabilizing events in the last 1.5 years. To a certain extent, the things have calmed down now between multiple ethnic groups in Manipur. And one such event which shall basically showcase that the things are moving towards normal in Manipur are the events, right? These kind of cultural events. There are two cultural events that are associated with the state here. Please make a note of both of them. One is Churai Lily Festival, and the second one is Sangai Festival. Now, what is the reason why it is named as a Shurai Lily Festival? Please understand both of these festivals. Point number one, are organized by the state government. Are organized by the state government. Second one, the first time this Shurai Lily Festival was held was in 2017. And the reason why it is named as like this, right? Why it is named as Shurai Lily Festival? It is based on name of a flower which is right declared as the flower of the state. Right? This is declared as a flower of the state. And second one, I said again organized by the state government itself, recognized by the state government, is the Sangai Festival. Sangai essentially is the bro antlered deer, which is also recognized as a state animal. These are the only points that you need to focus and take away from the discussion that is happening in the newspaper associated with Manipur. Okay, right. Two more articles. Two eminent personalities have passed away yesterday. Associated with this, there are certain points that you need to remember. First personality, Jayant Narlikar. Mr. Jayant Narlikar, a very well known personality, astrophysicist. What is right his contribution to this particular field of science? One, please understand, along with one more person, he proposed a steady state model. Remember this name, steady state model. What is the argument of a steady state model? Whenever you talk about genesis of right the genesis, right, you will come across a theory called as Big Bang theory. Correct? You'll come across a theory called as Big Bang theory. And no, I'm not talking about the English TV series. Don't say, sir, yes, sir, I've seen Big Bang theory. That's very nice. One of my favorite, etc. No, I'm not talking about the TV serial. I'm talking about a theory, Big Bang. What is the essence of the Big Bang theory? The whole cosmos was created at one point of time. There was a Big Bang that is essentially a burst like this. That is the starting point. And since then, right, you will see that you will see there is an expansion in the cosmos like this. Right? So there is a starting point and there is an expansion. That is essentially the concept of a Big Bang theory. But what is the argument of a steady state theory, which is opposed to the Big Bang? which is basically trying to say Big Bang is wrong and steady state is correct. According to the steady state theory or the model, there is no starting point for the cosmos. There is no starting point. It has been there, it will continue to be there. And right, it also says the cosmos is expanding like this, but at every point of time, right, at every point of time like this, there is a creation. There is creation of a matter, and because there is a creation, the density doesn't change. The density will continue to remain same, even though the cosmos is expanding. Like so, there are two opposite theories, but again, I hope you understand this. Which has more acceptability, which has a proof in the globe, which is more acceptable, it is actually the Big Bang theory. There are multiple proofs which have been provided, which makes the Big Bang theory more credible, right, compared to the steady state theory. But essentially, from this point, right, he was one of the person along with the multiple other people who proposed the steady state theory. Point number one. Point number two, he has been awarded with Padma Bhushan as well as Padma Vibhushan. Padma Bhushan in 1965, Padma Vibhushan in 2004. He was also awarded with UNESCO Kalinga Prize and Prix Jules Janssen recognition in 2004 and 1966. There are multiple writings. The two writings which have been quoted are one, Char Nagartale Maze, right? Char Nagartale Maze, right? Maze Vishwa. Essentially translating into four cities where I've lived my life. It's a Marathi word. Okay, so Char Nagarantale Maze Vishwa, right? And the other one is Dhumaketu. The first one has been awarded with the Sahitya Academy, and the second one, right? The article simply says has been made into a movie. He is also a founder. He is also the founder of Inter University Center for Astronomy and Astrophysics, which is located in Pune. These are certain factual points that you need to remember, can be asked in the preliminary examination. Please make a note of it. Final article, Mr. M.R. Srinivasan. What is the importance of this personality from the UPSC examination perspective? The first nuclear research facility or the nuclear research reactor that was set up in India was Apsara. And the team that set up Apsara, he was one of the participants, right? From the government representation, he was one of the participants. He is also the founder chairman of Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited. And he has also been awarded with the Padma Vibhushan in 2015. These are the three very important points which you need to remember associated with this personality. So, sad news, but for UPSC perspective, remember these particular points. Okay, now these are the 10 articles I wanted to discuss. Let me give you the key answers to the questions that I've given earlier. MCQ 109. Consider the following statements regarding Indian Labour Conference. It's a tripartite consultative committee. Yes. It must be held once every 5 years. No. The convention is that it should be held once every year. Once every year. The last Indian Labour Conference was held back in the year 2015. Remember this. The last conference was held back in the year 2015. After that, it's been more than 10 years now. No ILC has been held. There is a criticism also. The government is not holding the ILC. There's a criticism. Remember that. It is also known as the Labour Parliament. Just make a correction. It is also known as the Labour Parliament. Yes, not a Labour, not a committee. Labour Parliament. Yes, that statement is true. So two of the statements are true. Right option will be option B. Question number 110. The Environmental Protection Act has made the environmental impact assessment mandatory for certain projects. Yes, right. The Act of 1986 has provision for environmental impact assessment. The approvals provided by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change are based on the recommendations of the Expert Appraisal Committee. Yes, the projects covered under EIA, the clearances must be given by the central government. What is the meaning of the statement? Must be given means only by the central government. No, if your project is classified under the classification A, center, classification B, by the state government. Okay, so third statement is incorrect. Right option will be option B here. Right, so these are the questions as well as the articles that I wanted to discuss from daily edition of today's Hindu newspaper. If you have any questions, do let me know. I'll take up some of your questions and address your questions. Then we can close the session. Ah, Sir, as you said, WHO has no right to direct policies of the country of a country. Then how can IMF in case LPG reform with respect to India direct? My dear, WHO is a different. IMF is giving a loan to you. And because the IMF is giving a loan, it wants to ensure that you will not misuse the loan. You will basically use the loan for intended purposes, and you will also implement certain policies which will improve the situation of your country. That's the reason IMF imposes the conditions. Okay. Sanjana Gupta, difference between Padma Bhushan. My dear, in terms of stature, both are different. Okay. One is higher and the second one is low. Okay. Any other question? Done then. So that's it from my side in today's session. The PPT of this will be uploaded in my Telegram channel in next 15 to 20 minutes. Download it. If you like this initiative, do hit the like button. If you're yet to subscribe to YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. Thank you. Have a great day.